All right, today we are jumping into one of the most famous, most fascinating, and let's be honest, one of the most misunderstood books on the entire planet, the Book of Revelation.
Yeah, you know the stuff. When you hear Revelation, your mind probably jumps to the Four Horsemen, a giant red dragon, Armageddon. It's some pretty wild, even scary imagery, right? So the big question is, what is this book really all about? Is it some kind of secret, coded roadmap to the future? Well, here's the thing. The short answer is no. It's not a secret code for us 2,000 years later to try and crack. See, to really get what Revelation is saying, you need the right set of keys to unlock it. And once you have them, the whole thing just clicks. It stops being the source of confusion and transforms into this incredible message of hope.
Okay, so let's dive in. To unlock this thing, we're going to look at it from a few different angles. Who it was for, the unique way it was written, how the story is structured, the main conflict, and what it all means in the end. This is our game plan.
All right, first up, a message for a crisis. Look, our first key is all about context. It's so important because you can't really get what something means until you know who it was written for and you know why. So the first thing we've got to wrap our heads around is that Revelation wasn't originally written to us in the 21st century. It was basically a letter penned by the Apostle John while he was exiled on an island way back around 95 AD. And he sent it to 7 actual, real churches. And get this, these people weren't just sitting around thinking about the future. No, they were in the thick of it, facing jail time, losing everything they owned, even being killed for their beliefs by the Roman Empire. And listen to this. This quote from the book just hits you with how desperate they were. It's the voice of people who've been killed for their faith, crying out from under God's altar. They're not asking, hey, when's the world going to end? They're screaming, how long until we get justice? How long until this suffering stops? That's the question Revelation was written to answer. So that desperation leads us straight to our second key. We've got to understand the style of this book. John was using a kind of writing that was totally normal back then. But to us today, it seems, well, pretty weird. It's called apocalyptic literature. Now, when we hear apocalypse, we immediately think end of the world, right? But the word itself just means an unveiling, or, well, a revelation. The whole point of this writing style, with all its crazy symbols and visions, wasn't to give a literal play-by-play of the future. It was to pull back the curtain and show what was happening on Earth, that fight between Rome and the Church, from God's perspective. You know what it's like? It's kind of like a political cartoon today. You see a donkey and an elephant, and you immediately know what they represent, right? The cartoon uses those symbols to make a really sharp point about what's happening now. Well, that's exactly what apocalyptic writing did. It used symbols to make a point, just on a huge cosmic scale. The goal wasn't to confuse anybody. It was to give people going through hard times the courage to keep going. All right, this next key is a big one. Seriously, this might be the most important one because this is where almost everyone gets tangled up. We read Revelation thinking it's one long story, from chapter 1 to chapter 22 in perfect order. But it's not. Yeah, you heard that right. The book doesn't tell one long story. It tells the same story over and over, just from different angles. It's this cycle of suffering, then judgment, then final victory. And each time it retells the story, it uses new symbols and ramps up the intensity a bit. It's a literary trick called recapitulation. Here's a great way to think about it. Imagine a newspaper. The giant headline on the front page screams, "Victory," right? Then inside you have different articles, a news report, an opinion piece, a human interest story, all covering the same event from different perspectives. That's Revelation. It gives you the ending thirst. God wins. And then it just keeps circling back to tell you how it all goes down, each time adding more depth. And you can see it right here. The first cycle, the 7 seals, it tells the whole story. You get persecution, judgment, and then new creation. Boom. Then the next cycle, the 7 trumpets, starts all over again. It tells the same story, just with different symbols. And then, you guessed it, the 7 bowls do it a third time. Each pass-through just builds on the last one. So, if the book keeps telling the same story, what is that story? Well, that brings us to our fourth key. At its absolute core, Revelation is a war story. I'm talking about a massive cosmic battle between good and evil. John lays out the two sides, the two teams in this conflict, using these really powerful symbols. So on team good, you've got God on his throne, the Lamb who represents Christ, and the saints, which is the church. And on team evil, you've got the dragon, that's Satan, who powers up these 2 beasts. The first beast is basically corrupt, evil government. Think Rome at the time. The second beast is all the propaganda and false religion that props that evil government up. And the whole reason for showing them this big cosmic battle was to give those first Christians a crucial message. It was to say, hey, I know it looks like Rome, the beast, is winning down here on earth, but that's not the real battle. The real war is spiritual, and in that war, the winner has already been decided. God is still in charge, and the victory is already his.
Okay, so let's put it all together. We have the context, the style, the structure, the theme. Once you have all those keys, the real message of Revelation becomes incredibly clear and powerful.
So what's the big takeaway? It's that Revelation was never meant to be a horror story. It was a letter of comfort, a message of encouragement for people who were really suffering. All those wild symbols are there to make one huge point. Even when history looks like a total mess and evil seems to be winning, God is still in control. Justice is coming. And in the end, hope wins. Period. So I guess I'll just leave you with this question to think about. What happens when we stop trying to use Revelation like a crystal ball to predict the future, and instead we read it for what it is? A powerful letter of hope written to people in the middle of a crisis. When you see it that way, the whole book just transforms. It becomes this timeless promise that no matter how bad things look, evil and suffering don't get the last word.